Welcome to the Finance and Administrative Services Committee, the very first one ever, a change of name from Corporate Services. And on this committee serving is myself, Gladys Blackmore as chair, Councillor Bressie, Councillor Palat, and Mayor Jackie Clayton. We'll call the meeting to order and we'll start with reports. Our service area report from Ms. Whiteway.
Thank you, Chair Blackmore. So a few updates from Finance and Administration. As you know, we've had a large joint project between Finance, Procurement, Human Resources, and IT. So we continue to work through this successfully and continue with training and support throughout the organization. Supplementary assessment and tax notices were mailed out last week. These are due by the end of December. And our assessors are continuing to work on new assessments for the 2023 tax year. We are preparing for budget deliberations. Those will be held starting on November 15th. And as well, we are closing off the September month end, which is the third quarter report that will come forward to committee in a few weeks' time. In our IT and GIS department, video surveillance projects completed some critical area upgrades of work. So this was at City Hall, Eastlink Center, Service Center, and all the fire halls. And we continue to do regular evergreening projects as well. Additionally, GIS has supported transportation in development of a snow removal pilot project. So this is an application that we hope to be able to use over the winter that can show status of snow removal at the street level within neighborhoods. And then the info will be shared on the city's website for public to view. And finally, within risk management, we are preparing for our annual insurance renewal. So we work together with our service provider and all city departments to ensure that we collect all relevant information for that policy renewal. And that completes my update. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Whiteway. I'm going to start the questions off myself. You mentioned tax assessment review that's taking place right now. Are we going to see any growth at all in our assessment, minimal growth, or are we going to be just awed and amazed with awesome growth?
Thank you for the question, Chair Blackmore. So we're looking at probably minimal growth going into 2023, so not as high as we've seen in previous years, but we will have some growth.
Okay, that's good to hear. I'll ask the committee if there's any questions. Hearing none, I will move forward to policy 346, reserve funds, and open this here, and again, that's Ms. Whiteway who's leading us through this.
Thank you, Chair Blackmore. So I'll respectfully assume that you've all reviewed the report and information, and I'll just touch on a few points. So today I'm here to recommend that committee recommend council approve amendments to policy 346, which is the reserve funds as they're presented. One of the attributes that's identified for each reserve in policy 346 is interest bearing. So that directs whether a portion of the interest earned by the city on our investments shall be allocated to the reserve fund. As they relate to municipal reserves, interest earnings are intended to act as inflation protection, such that a reserves balance increases as CPI and the price of goods and services increase. So the current policy directs administration to allocate a portion of interest earnings to all of the reserves identified. However, upon review, administration's determined that there are two reserves that, due to their nature, do not need to have the inflation protection of interest allocation. So we're here to recommend that we no longer allocate interest to the Financial Stabilization Reserve or the Future Expenditures Reserve. By making this amendment and eliminating the interest allocations to these two specific reserves, this will increase the net revenue recognized in the annual operating budget by $430,000. And that is my report. Thank you.
And do we have questions, Councillor Bressie?
Great, thank you. Can you remind what return on investments do we budget for every year again as a percentage?
Thank you, through the chair. So it does vary based on projections from our investment management team. Right now, we would be looking at a lower return on investments and around the 2% mark.
Any further questions? Someone like to make a motion to move this forward? Councillor Bressie?
I'm going to sort of speak against it, so I'd rather not make the motion.
Okay, well, someone's got to make a motion. Thank you, Mayor Clayton.
I would move that committee recommend council approve amendments policy 346, reserve funds as presented. Thanks.
Okay, and Councillor Bressie, you wish to speak against it?
Yeah, definitely happy to vote yes today to send it to council for consideration. I'll probably vote yes to council, but I need to think through it a little bit more. My concern is it makes sense that we don't need inflation protection in these, but I hate that drawing out of our financial stabilization reserve would all of a sudden start having an operational impact on us. So we're drawing out $1 million, and not only do we have less money in that reserve, but now here's money that we're planning to go into our operational budget that won't be in our operational budget during what might be a tough time for the city. So it's not a huge amount of money we're talking about, but still, that is a worry that's niggling a little bit in the back of my mind. So I need to think about this a little bit. Definitely yes today.
I will look to the city manager to respond to that.
Thank you, Chair. A really good point, and believe me, this one took some deliberations at the CLT as well. The reserve funds that need to be inflation protected, we do need to have the discipline to do that, or they won't be adequate when we go to use them. The reserve funds that are being advocated here as not receiving interest earnings are simply reserve funds that don't have any correlation to inflation. And the effect of that is effectively that we're drawing money out of taxpayers' pockets that we don't really need to have. So I believe that it is a very sound recommendation. I would urge at budget time that it be supported. But I think it is imperative that the CFO exercise an ongoing discipline to make sure that those reserve funds are there for us when we need them, and that the operating budget is not unnecessarily relying on a less than fully reliable source of revenue for balancing. Your point's well taken.
Do we have any other questions or concerns? Seeing none, we'll call the question. And that does carry. We have no other correspondence or other business or policy review, so I will move on to the outstanding item list, which I think is empty, is it not? Open it. And so, seeing that, we will call this meeting adjourned.